there's this catch-all that is in violations and penalties. I mean, there's two different sections. So, you know, from a legal perspective, right, this is based upon a working ordinance in Kalamazoo. So this is fully functioning, but, you know, if we could, again, if adopted, the first reading, 9.15 should be reconciled with 9-32. Just be certain that, you know, you're clear on what that process is to Corporation Council.
Chairman?
Council.
Okay, so a couple big ones here. So, I'm looking at the one that we're working from the computer now, and the other one. The licensing in Article 2, Section 9.4 talks about all the different types of facilities, and it says no limit. So I thought we could change that to change no limit to regulated by ordinance instead of saying no limit.
I'm sorry, which section?
My number.
9-4?
Yes, A.
Well, what I did here on that one is that Councilwoman Whitman would like micro businesses stricken there. But the reason that those are shown as no limit is that they are regulated by zoning. And the distances that are, so depending on what the distances that the council sets, as well as the other parameters, that effectively limits, you know, distances from one to the other, is effectively limiting the total that can be constructed.
Okay.
I mean, if you said 2,250 feet at best, two could be created. If it was at you know, the other end of the spectrum, 1,250. There are 78 parcels, but not enough distance between those parcels that would result in probably more than 6 items. And then with the changes that Corporation Council has put forward, again, we'll get to it, I expect that we will have a new map between now and the next meeting. Unfortunately, the person that's been doing the due diligence on these maps and has a subject matter expertise is not able to do it over the weekend.
Okay, so that's a big one. So the big ones for me are the curbside, which you said is not in there, and obviously the feet we're going to talk about later. The curbside drive-throughs, nothing like that. I mean, couldn't we put, instead of no limit, couldn't we say regulated by ordinance instead of no limit? I mean, because to me that.
But the two have to be read in harmony. So
I get it.
This and then the zoning have to be read in harmony. So. Because there's only, I mean, there's no limit, but there's only so many industrial areas within the city of Taylor. There's only so many I-1, I-2.
Okay, so is there within the documents in the state document, Mr. Plato, is there like random checks or, you know, random, let me see, periodic inspections or anything like that? When are they, you know, sometimes you inspect things once, and then if you don't go back, then, you know, things can happen.
Well, I point to section 9.29.
9.29.
Inspection of licensed premises.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a number. I'm not going to read all of these.
Gotcha.
But that first one I think is certainly pertinent. During all business hours and other times when the premises are occupied by the licensee or an employee or agent of the licensee, all licensed premises shall be subject to examination and inspection by the Department of Public Safety and all other city departments for the purpose of investigating and determining compliance with the provisions of this chapter and any other applicable state and local laws or regulations. And then it goes on to, you know, there's a number of sections there.
That was 929, you said?
9-29, yes.
Okay.
To the chair, if I can, just add to
Corporation
that,
Council, yes.
by the fact that somebody is applying for a license and approved, they are in fact consenting to allow those inspections at the time.
Okay, so they're not scheduled, but it could happen at any time.
Not scheduled, you don't need a, you know, like a search warrant or anything to go in and make an inspection, or, you know, by getting their permit to the city, applying. They are consenting to knowing that their businesses are going to be inspected regularly.
That would be 9-29B, consent and inspection.
Okay. Can you point me to, is there something, like how they track sales, or like, how do they know, like, you know, go to the grocery store and there's expiration dates on things, so is it the same kind of thing? I don't know how that works, like for outdated or and there's no untested, right? Is everything tested?
Yes,
Everything's tested.
everything
I think I read that.
is tested within the state of Michigan.
Okay.
I don't know if they have a best buy date or
Right.
a soon buy date.
Just asking, this is all new to me, so, okay, so I wonder, like, how do they, does it go back? I don't even know. Does it go back this, I guess, I don't know.
Through the chair, I thought it does.
It does? Yeah, okay, probably less.
But,
Okay, that's all I have on this one. Thank you for indulging me, everybody. I
So,
hope I answered everybody's questions that emailed and met with me, and I hope I did. Got some answers for people.
any further discussion on the motion that is before us? We'll open it up to the public. The motion is a motion to approve the first reading. And I'll stress that. This is, it takes 2 readings to pass. First reading of an ordinance titled Marijuana Commercial Businesses. Is there any open support?
Philip Nisley, 14,000 Rackle. For those pushing for leniency of distance, may we please remind ourselves tonight that Thursday, August 11, in a special council meeting, City Attorney Ed Plato told the council and residents in attendance that the marijuana petitioner's wording was not in compliance with the Taylor City chapter, and I have the article from the newspaper here as well. Various items he is quoted in the paper are illegal. He said we could not put it on the ballot, but rather he then did not have us as a council rule the petition non-compliant. It was not dropped that night. Instead, our attorney recommended that the advisory petition he had in possession be used. When the council adopted his advice and worded their November ballot to the Taylor citizens that, quote, and I have a ballot here, a yes vote would support allowing certain recreational marijuana establishment in the city of Taylor only in industrial districts with a minimum of 2,500 feet from each facility, schools, churches, libraries, and residential areas. Legal counsel that we have asked say this council is bound to that restriction. I have letters here as well.
Let me pause, since your words are being put into your own corporation council. What is your opinion?
So I have not seen the article. I do know that I had drafted a advisory proposal to put on the ballot that did not have any minimum setback requirement other than the asking the residents of Taylor if they wanted to have recreational marijuana in industrial districts in the city. The 2,500 feet requirement was put in after I drafted that proposal, and that's the way the council approved it to go on the ballot. But I did not get any minimum setback requirement in the proposal that I drafted.
Again, the legal counsel says by the nature that that was approved and put on the ballot by this body, that holds this body. 18 weeks ago, that vote occurred. Tonight, we're 18 weeks from that decision. It's time for the council to stand up for the citizens and vote no to any other distance or zoning idea, since shorter distances bring potential crime.
Let me remind you that this section does not have the distances in it. That would be the next item.
When they come back then?
If you want to talk about distances, it is in the next item.
The next thing.
Yes.
But if they vote no on this one, we don't go to the next one, do we?
It is still on the agenda. But
Again,
I will recognize you under 7.2 on